All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is May 24th, 2021. Just a reminder, please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is listed out here in the agenda while you are attending these meetings. This is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube playlist. If you're watching this from home, we do encourage you to join us live. We meet every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time for our community meetings. And if you aren't able to join there, we do meet every second and fourth Thursday of the month for our office hours, which is at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that's just an opportunity for the maintainers to go even more in depth with any discussion items that you have or anything you need help with from the Carvel tool suite. When you are attending these meetings, we do ask that you put in your name and any organization that you're representing so that we can keep track of who from the community is joining us live and we can keep in touch with y'all. Just one of the announcements we have today is that next week there will not be a community meeting. We have a holiday here in the United States, so the offices are closed and we're probably going to be doing some barbecuing or who knows what, enjoying that day off here. If you have anything you wish to bring up with the team for this meeting, please add that down into the discussion topics or within the triage help, and we'll get to it later on in the meeting itself. And with that, I will kick it on over to Aaron Hurley to share the rest of the agenda items.
All right, let me share my screen. How is this? Is this the right size for folks? Cool. All right, so how about we start with just going around the horn on some status updates. So YTT schema is V1 is still in progress. Folks want to jump in and add any notes regarding the past week on any type, on the any type?
Yeah, just top line. We've got these next two items. The PRs are, sorry, this item, the PR is imminent. So like there's just like one final review we think, and that we'll be merging that in.
Cool. And then the documentation story.
Yeah, adding a spec for schemas and then also sort of an introduction document currently in progress.
Awesome. Anything else on schemas from the past week or so? Cool. Up to the next one then, kapp-controller, the package manager API work. Eli, want to provide any updates from the past week?
Last week we caught 2 new releases. Alpha.8, I think, included the ability to specify schemas, and then Alpha.9 included the split of the package CR.
Awesome. And then I believe we also had some image package stuff going on in the past week that, Joao, maybe you have the most context on?
Yeah, so as I said last week, we released version 0.80 of image package. And basically this new version contains, it was released because it contained 2 bug fixes. One that was related to a copy of a bundle when the bundle contained images, like if the bundle was not copied to a place, and there were images in a private and a public repository. So that was fixed on this version, on this 0.80 version. And another issue that we solved was related to that we only saw in Arbor, where if you did a head request to try to find out if an image was present or not, Arbor was just failing and just getting us like a 401 as a reply. And so now we fixed it. And the way we fix it is we do a head request. And if for some reason the head request fails, to see if the image is there, we just do a get. So that has some problems. We are incurring in some time penalties here, because a get request takes much more time than a head. But at the same time, we're still keeping the head request, because that will allow us not to get into problems with Docker Hub and so on, because we can just check if the image is there without being rate limited. So those are like the two big issues that were bugs that were fixed. Also, there were two deprecations that happened. One, I talked about it last week, that is now we preserve the execution bit on any file that you have in your bundle. And so that creates a breaking change, because if you try to create a bundle with version 070 or prior, you'll get a SHA from that bundle. But if you try to do exactly the same bundle, but with 080, you'll get a different SHA. The only difference is that there's a bit now that is saved. The other one is that we changed the format of the default tag. So if you were relying on that, be aware that we changed that. And then the rest just added some UX improvements. And we would like to call out Carlesia that she made one of the changes there on our change log there. So, and we're pretty good. Just pretty good. Thank you, Carlesia, for your work. And we hope to see more people helping us out on these releases.
Awesome. Thank you, Joao. And also we added an announcement for kbuild 030. Joao, do you want to speak to this one as well?
I can. So this one was, so like the two features that are there have been developed for some time. So we cut a new release because of that bug, that if you had like your configuration for if you had your configuration that you passed to kbuild, and for some reason in that configuration the word image was present, and you were trying to replace an image somewhere, and it was underneath that key in YAML, it would never find it. So it would find the key image and it would stop searching down. So that was a bug. It was like it was somewhat of like an important bug, because some people could have like their configuration where they have like image and then the name of the image that they want to replace and then the image, so like a list of images, and that could hinder their YAML. So this is a very big change that we did here. Another thing, we started deprecating everything that is related of the features that were moved from kbuild into image package. So now they have like a deprecation warning. It just tells you like, oh, this is not gonna be here and for much longer. So if you want to use them, just start using image package. And I believe that was it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Cool. Any other updates from folks? All right, we'll jump into this week's plans then. So let's start with YTT schemas. I believe there's some stories here that we want to discuss today.
Yeah, we have an initial round of internal exploratory testing, which yielded out a couple items. We still plan on getting some usability testing into as we're getting to the point where we're going to lift the experimental flag. But there's a few things we already see right now that we want to make improvements. Quick question, folks. Do we already start that first story?
Yeah, I was just thinking it should be in progress and it should be assigned to Garrett and me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just a quick peek at that just to let folks know what that's about. It's that today, if a value is being contributed to a data value through an overlay, and it's and it's a starlark value. That is here. This is a starlark expression that equals 4. That that the starlark value actually gets inserted in that comes up as a 64-bit integer rather than a general integer. So this is about making those two equivalent. Seems like it might be a little bit of a weird use case. So actually, there's here's what came from the exploratory testing. Is that example here where there's a existing project that's, oh no, that's what the output is currently. That's the context section is describing, hey, here's an existing user of YTT where this would be a blocker for them to migrate to schema. So that's why it's important for us to do it. Yeah.
Cool. I know some folks already got together and pointed this. Any questions from folks that aren't familiar with the story? All right, should we move on to the next one then? Does that sound good? Cool. So 393.
So the overall symptom here is straightforward. If you scroll down to the undesired result real quick, we'll come back up. But down here, what you'll notice is that there's no found in this type mismatch. We would like to show what type was found to be able to at least compare to what was expected by the schema. This one's particularly gnarly because it comes from a location. It comes from a piece of code that doesn't have a known location. So you don't even know the type, nor do you know where it's coming from. So that just made it worse. So what we'd like to do is at least show the type, even if we can't show the exact location right now. So it is out of scope to try and like somehow resolve providing some direct output here for like the source line that's contributing this. That's actually quite difficult to do at this point. So we're just for this story, we're just saying, hey, let's at least include the found. That should be present. Okay, so now that you have that piece, we can kind of go back up to like, here's the example. I'll maybe scroll down just a little bit, Aaron, to let people see that undesired result again. Yeah. So in this particular case, you'll see that schema defined an integer, and it actually was a string, 4 in quotes, as opposed to just a raw 4. And that got included in this way. So. Yep, a little bit of a hint. I'm not sure why that's not showing up in this preview. Looks like that's interesting. So ZenHub doesn't render the preview from this link, which it has the lines of code there that where we normally would include the found. So careful. This may feel like a really very pinpoint type thing. Don't be fooled by the precision of the way the story is pointing at what is probably the source. Please consider like why was that if statement in there? Like, will there be ramifications of removing it? Hopefully, if you did, a test would fail, but it is definitely something for us to like make sure we consider. We're gonna inadvertently create a regression. So just keep that in mind, please.
Any questions from folks?
We don't have the position, but do we have the type?
We have the type.
Okay.
When we pick up the story, similar to the story we pointed above, we have to work off, do we have to work off the overlay schemas branch? Is it dependent on any of those changes, or can we actually develop for this?
I don't think so. This is a longer standing thing. I think this is outside of that.
Perfect.
And let me jinx it. I expect those PRs to get merged today.
So the only scenario where this happens is if you try to do a template replace and do it with data values. That's where the only place where this happens. Or
That's where it was seen. I don't know if that's the only way in which that can happen.
Okay.
All right. Let me know when you've had a chance to think it through and you're ready to throw points. Take your time. Okay, cool. Thank you, Garrett. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've got 3 1s and a 2. Anybody want to talk about what they see?
I just pointed it to like this. This looks like a pretty simple removal of an if statement. But I think, as John said, I gave it one more point just because I have not sure why the if statement was there. And I don't know if that will cause any problem if we just remove it. So there's like uncertainty on that part. We might have to do something more. Like we might have to fix that question mark problem in order to solve this story. I don't know. So that's my one point. I hope not. I hope not. But that might be the case if we need to keep the locations.
I can tell you that you won't need to solve the location problem in order to, but that doesn't invalidate anything else that you said there. Yeah. Okay. Rough consensus was 1. Cool. All right. Let's stay on the summary for a second because I want to make sure that we don't get lost in the details. I'll go over this, but I want to anchor you to that summary. So just take it a second to read that. Okay, so the intent here is there are 4 messages, not some open-ended thing about n number of messages, and that there is like real intention behind the shift. We're not just like moving things around in order to sort of seemingly solve a Rubik's Cube randomly. Like there's intention here. So the details. So if we scroll down just a hair, so this kind of sets up, trying to set up the motivation. What's the gap here? So we're inspired by another project, the Rust project, that has been doing lots of work for some time on improving how approachable their error messages are. They've done some of that work very publicly. There's a link to that article. You can go look at that and see a whole bunch of art that has been stolen, in quotes. Um, and then here are some, when you go to pick this up, some very specific factors that went into the formatting of these messages. This is not to say that what's present is sacred. This is to say, like, these are the reasons for these shifts in movements, trying to convey the purpose and the why we're doing what we're doing. If you find that like there's another adjustment to make, like, you're the implementer. Think through like how that's going to improve the UX. And if you see that, like, that's the point of this story, is to improve the UX. So this is trying to help like give some of that mindset, like help load up some of that mindset. So if you're in there and you see something even better, like, I encourage you to use your creativity in your aspiring designer eye to try and make it better if that is true. and feasible. All right, and then this next set is a punch list of all the little things. You're going to see very specific examples, but this is showing, this bullet list is, here are all the things that changed from what is the current format of the schema error messages. So this is just like very detailed breakout list, so you can tell what's happening here generally. But let's take a look at some of the scenarios. I think it's going to be easier to sort of see a couple of these, and you can kind of pattern match. So here's an example of where we have invalid schema. This is our current error message format. You can see we're yelling at the user. The hints put up against. There's no white space here, and it's not that anybody ought to be confused, but we're using the same delimiter to show contents of a file as we are with commentary. Here, we give it a little bit more breathing room, both between the error message and the line that we're focused on. See that the line, the source file is actually pulled out above, making the size of the gutter far more predictable and actually reclaims quite a bit of real estate, and makes it possible to have long path names without it just destroying the format of the error message. There's your line number. See, the commentary has a different delimiter, hoping that it's doing the same thing to your eye, where that reads a little bit more like this is stuff that's not in the file, but more about comments. Notice there's actually like a series of hints in this particular case, each one having, it's sort of like a little bit of a list. When Dennis looked at this, he had a great suggestion of, if you put in new lines, you can split on that and maybe format. So that's an example. Let's go to the next one. Remember, there's going to be 4 total here. Same story, less yelling. The message also, the wording here is a little bit more about what is it that hopefully could stick in your mind about what was exactly not expected, but without repeating exactly what you see down here in the expectation. Some of the stuff was great. We kept a lot of the elements here. Those were fine. Again, suggesting that if we had space for having multiple hints, you can actually sort of cover multiple situations, as long as they're worded in a way that doesn't tell the user what to do, but instead sort of either explicitly or implies, well, if this is what you were trying to accomplish, this other approach might be better, is sort of the intent there. Yep, it's getting repetitive now, but like hopefully you can start to see these things. Mismatch type is real thin. It's nice because this is probably going to be the workhorse error message. We'll probably get the most value out of this one. Okay, and then the undefined map key. Again, multiple hints. And those are the 4 different kinds of errors that we're throwing out of schema right now.
Can I see the last 2? Those are the type mismatch and undefined map key, like the titles in the after block. Like, so in scenario 3, after it's like a YTT error values of wrong type. And then in scenario 4, it's an undefined map key, but here in the title, it's like it's talking about overlaying again. Like in scenario 3, like the original message was about an overlaying message error, I thought. Like if you go to if you scroll to scenario 3, the before clause, it's like overlaying data values. Yeah.
That's a typo. That's an inadvertent omission.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, the everything up to the error, the good catch, up to the schema error message should be identical, left alone.
Cool.
Yeah, and the intent here, like, so as we were going through this and doing this design, the intent was to not expand any need for significant, extremely feasible. Like, if there's anything in here that isn't data that's already sitting there, that is not matching up with what we're hoping with this story. We're hoping that we take the information we have available to us, and maybe, like I said, with like the hints, maybe a little bit of play with that. Maybe you decide as the implementer, you're like, no, I'll go ahead and make that a slice. Or maybe you decide to interpret new lines as a prefix on his, whatever. But nothing any more than that was intended. If it gets any gnarlier than that, then we miss something. We inadvertently asked for something that's less feasible than we intended.
UX wise, when I'm looking to that error message, I am waiting to see the contents of lines 2 and 4 as well. It must be just me and my diff head, because that's what I expect to see, where you have the pipes without anything. So I don't know. I don't know if that might. So like the first reaction when I saw this was like, oh, interesting. The file has nothing on line 2 or line 5. That was like my first thought, but I'm not sure if this like is helpful or not.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff in here that's subjective. And that means that it lands differently for different people. I'd encourage you to like play with that. So like, if there's something that can be done that like would improve that, I'd say that's exactly what I was talking about when I said don't take these as sacred per se. So do the best you can. I'll say this, I did play around with trying to have more lines in there, and it actually gets, so it's not that it's infeasible, but it's quite hard, because you have to actually probably access your parent. You have to know whether or not the meta that you're looking at is on that line. Or you have to somehow pipe in original source, which we do not have at that moment. So there, yeah.
I was not saying that we need to have it there. I'm saying that the way it is displayed is telling me that it is going to display me line 2 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that it should be there. I'm just saying like the fact that you have like they are all the same, I would expect more lines to expect to see more lines. I'm not saying that it should show more lines.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead and signal when you are ready. All right. 1, 2, 3. 2 2s and 3 1s. Anything anybody want to bring up? Hasn't yet been brought up, mentioned in terms of complexity. Yeah.
The complexity of implementing these changes in the error message seems rather low to me, but thinking about the topics that are in the summary there, like how can this be better, like the thing that Joao mentioned, those things I think are more complex. That's why I added a point to my pointing.
Yeah, just to add on to that, working with the error messages in the past, there can be a lot of like nuanced ways that the error message is communicating to the user, and to try to tease those out and try to get it just right, just perfect almost, from like with all your current context of what feels like what should be perfect, can take a while to get there. And so I want to give the space for that. If I was the one working on that, I would want that kind of space.
Anyone else?
As a suggestion, like I suggest to implement as is, or any tweak that you see like, okay, this looks better like this way or that way, and then have people look at it. Just like have people look at it. And this can be part of the story, or can be like after this story. But I think that we should try to do here, like the messages look good as they are right now. So whoever did the work before, good job there. So personally, I think we should just implement this as is in the story, and maybe a little tweak in here or there if we feel like, oh, this feels a little bit strange, or I prefer it in like a little bit of a different way. And then after that, just get people's opinion about it, because we'll never craft a perfect message. So I don't think we should dwell a lot of time on it. That's why I voted 1.
Yeah, I voted 1, and it was mainly, I made the assumption that there's just this one place in the code base that, you know, eventually catches an error and then displays it to the UI, and getting that kind of printing out the error message that we want it to look like. It's just contained in this one place. And so it's like iterating on this function. It's like the only place from an engineering code-wise perspective that we need to worry about. And like maybe just like test drive or add some more tests around that if there aren't any. So I thought most of the work there and iterating on that function. I don't know if that function even exists, but that's how I assumed it worked.
Cool. All right. Well, we were basically an even split. So let's do one more pointing real quick. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Rough consensus is a 1. I like to make sure folks know that like they have the latitude to put in the effort they want in order to like get it to what they want. I think we've talked through the parameters there, and there's options. So use your best judgment, please.
Do we
All right,
want to
we've
keep
worked-
going with the next story, or should we
Yeah,
shift gears?
let's do one more. Let's do one more. I got 1, 2, 3. Mhm. So today, if you have turned on the schema function and you like put in the flag and you have a private library that doesn't have schema, but it does have data values, you get an error. Like you can't go forward. So this says, let's make that a warning. This came up in exploratory testing. See if Fricates has it at 4 or more, like a number of libraries it uses and that are actually authored by other teams. I expect this to be a case for anybody who's using non-trivial stuff. So consider this a blocker that way, because you can't then use schema until all your dependencies do.
We're talking about strictly using schema with the experimental flag.
We're talking about even once we release it, when we take the flag off, this would still end up being true, I think. Let's make it so it's not not an error. So you take out the flag. Schema is enabled.
I think right now, when schema is not enabled, we'll pass a document schema labeled as an any type, that's in PR. And the whole idea of when it's enabled but no schema is given, we provide like a null schema, which is going to error later down the road. And the discussion of removing the experimental flag has also been involved in discussing removing the null schema. So if those things go away together, then I was under the impression that this scenario was no longer valid.
So what, in that case, what would be the behavior when we've removed the flag and permanently turned on schema?
If no schema is provided, it's a fully permissive schema for that execution context.
Instead of the null. And so we don't warn, we just downshift to whatever you get with data values is what you get. Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's defer this then. I didn't see that. I'll pull this down. I'm going to pull this down just above the remove schema feature flag, Aaron. I did that just now. Thanks for that call out, Garrett. I think you're right. I think when we go to remove the flag, it'll all kind of fall back into place because then there's no check from the null schema itself because it won't exist anymore. Okay, nice. Love it. It's like deleting code, but it's a story. Okay. Yeah, the title isn't great on this one, but it is baked. This one actually is very specifically about improving the error message that you get when you include a schema and you're targeting it to a private library, but you accidentally gave the wrong name for the library, let's say. And so it never gets used because the library ref points to a library that doesn't exist. So there's actually a check there today. Data values has been doing this for some time now, and we now have this for schema. But this is about improving the way we message it. So this is an error message improvement. So this gets to what Garrett was talking about. It's like I think you were saying too, Joel, like it's hard to get to the right words. This is saying, please take the time to get to the right words in this case.
Could we leverage the format from the previous story, like the expected found format, like expected this line in the schema, you know, to match a library that exists, but found this library reference that points to a library that doesn't exist? Is there like value in having that kind of consistent expected found format here, or is this like it doesn't fit well enough for that format? It's just you gave us a schema that doesn't, you know, that's not used, and that's really a different type of error message.
It's a good question. I hadn't considered it personally. When we're working on this story, like putting the story together, it felt more about just straight up that sentence was jargon laden and hard to really make sense of what it was really trying to say, which was you included a schema, and this probably be the same for data values, that was clearly meant for some library, some dependency, and it didn't make it to that dependency. So something's not right. Whether or not that is like easy to do and write that as like, I'd say go explore that, see what that looks like, see what you think. Like Joao said, grab others to like get a second opinion, see if that works if you want to go down that route. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, this error message comes from a similar case, but for data values rather than a schema.
Mm-hmm.
Should we change the data values error message at the same time as we change this schema error message?
Yeah, it's not saying that. Yes, it should. And I think they're actually like they might literally be like right next to each other, I think.
Okay.
So yes, like both those messages have the same wording problem. Are we ready? Cool. 1, 2, 3. 1 point. Cool. All right, let's do time for one more? Or how are we doing?
We have 15 minutes to spare, so.
Do we have any topics on the board? Discussion topics, triage. I don't see any. Okay.
Are there any non-schema stories to discuss today?
I didn't prepare any.
We can discuss the image package story that's there about the locations.
Okay. Would it be right to shift gears there then? Seems like we have a good amount of runway for YTT. Let's see. Oops.
Yeah, so this story, generate location OCI image. So the problem that we were facing here was the fact that there isn't really like a nice way for you to know if a bundle was copied from one registry to another, or if just a single image push was done. And because of that, there's also a second problem, that is when you're trying to execute an image package pool, we don't know if the images that are part of your bundle, if they are bundles themselves or if they are just single images. So the problem with that is that every time you do a pool, you have to go through all the images that are in the images lock to find out if it is a bundle or if it is just a regular image. And then if it isn't a bundle, you need to go into that bundle, read the images lock and do the same thing. So the problem here is if you never relocated, if you never copied your bundle, then there might be some images that are part of the bundle repository, like the final bundle repository. There might be some other images that are not. And you might not, with your keys, with your authentication, you might not have access to the location that these images were to start off. So when you're trying to do a pull, the only thing that you really need to pull is the bundle itself or all the bundles. You don't need to check the other images to see if they are there, if they are not there. So this is roughly the problem that we are trying to address here. And so another problem that this causes is that, let's imagine that you have 10 images on your images lock for a particular bundle. The operation of pulling a bundle, it requires you to go to the registry 11 times, one for the bundle and one for each image. So if you had 100 images, you'd have to go to the registry 100 times. And the only thing you need is just to pull the bundle. But you needed to check if the other images were bundles or not, so you could download the other bundles. So there's like also a performance problem here. So how are we planning on addressing this? So the idea is on the copy with rename proposal, there was the concept of this location OCI image that contained like a supermarket list with all the images that are part of a particular bundle, right? And we decided like, oh, why don't we borrow this particular feature that is like isolated, that's not related to this proposal, but it will be used by this proposal. We can just implement it before and we can solve this problem that we are seeing with pool. So this is exactly what we are planning to do. So if you scroll a little bit down, there's a little bit of information there. But basically, this OCI image, this locations OCI image will live inside the bundle repository. And it will be of that format that you see there. Annotations. This format here, right? So it will be of the kind, it will be a file on the root of the image. The file will be called images lock location. Sorry, I don't see it there. I think it might be a little bit up, but it will be on the root of the file system of the OCI image, and it will contain a list of all the images. And the values that it will contain are the image itself. So where the image, like the identifier, that is will be the same as you have it in the images log. The repository where you can find this image, and then if it is a bundle or not. So this is relevant information for the pool, because when you pool recursively, you want to pool all the bundles, but you don't want to find if it is a bundle or not. So you already have this information here. So this file will contain all that. And the question now is, how might we find this OCI image, right? Because it will have its own cha, it will have like everything together. So the idea is that we're going to create a tag that will look something like this. And we will try to find this image inside the same repository that the bundle exists. So if there is a SHA-256 dash, then the SHA of the bundle dot locations dot image package, we know that this OCI image exists. So we can just read it, get the contents, and with one go to the registry, you know all the images that are part of this bundle and if they are bundles or not. So this will increase dramatically our performance on the pool side. So there are some caveats for this idea, right? So if you scroll a little bit down. So one of them is that this one, we're going to use tags, and tags are mutable. And because tags are mutable, you might have someone replace the image that we place that looks all nice, that contains that one file. It might be replaced with something else. So this is a problem. This is like it's a caveat. But for now, we are thinking that this is okay. And we'll see in the future if this starts causing us some problems. I know that there are some registries that have immutable tags. For these, this would be a caveat that doesn't exist, right? So for example, I think AWS doesn't have has the ability for you to say that the repository have immutable tags and you cannot change a tag after you create it. So this is one of the caveats. The other caveat is related to replication. So if you have two registries and you're replicating repos from one registry to another, something might happen. You might not replicate all the images. So this is a problem. And for now, we're going to say, okay, so if you did not replicate everything, it is normal that things will fail. So it's not like the greatest solution, but it's the solution we have for right now. And we're going to see if we can move us forward with these two caveats that we have. So given all this, how is image package going to start searching for the images that are part of the bundle? So the first thing that it's going to look for, it's for this image to see if it can find the locations. And if it could find the locations, then it doesn't need to do anything else. It found the images, it has a list of all the images, so we're good. What happens if it doesn't find it? So we are going to go back to how things were before, right? We check if the image exists in the particular location, that it's the bundle registry, bundle repository, plus the SHA-256 of the image. And if we find it, awesome. But if we cannot find it, we are going to assume that the image is in the original location of that image. And we're going to stop searching. So this could cause a situation where if you have a bundle that for some reason was not copied, you would not be able to pull the information from it. Okay. But this could cause our problems if we start getting back to the original image location. So this is more or less like, feels like a very big thing that's going to happen. And it is going to be a very big thing. It's not going to be it's going to be backwards compatible, because the schema, if it tries to find the OCI image, and if it finds it, that's awesome. If it not, it just goes back to everything to the old ways, right? So this is like roughly what we have here. So if you scroll down, there's like a think of first comment that contains more or less the acceptance criteria that we were thinking for this story. So in a first scenario, you create a bundle and then you copy the bundle to this new location and it should succeed. And when you pull the locations image, you should see one file called images locations.yaml on that where you pulled, and it should look like this. So it should contain this particular image, where it is located, and that this is not the bundle. So this is always piggybacking on our examples, basic examples here that contains one image. So this is our scenario one. Cool. Scenario two, copy a bundle with bundles, just creates one locations image. So let's imagine that we create again our bundle number one, or our example number two, right? And then we create a second bundle that points to the first bundle that we just pushed. When we copy it to a new location, there should be only one image, one locations image. And when we pull that locations image, now it should have two images associated to it with it. One is the initial image, the same one as we had in the scenario one, but now we will also have a location for the bundle that was a nested bundle, and it should say true there. Cool. So third scenario, copy bundle twice with image creates a location image pointing to the latter location. So if you copy image from one repo to another and then copy it again, the locations should reference the latest copy. So the latest copy was made to this particular repository, and you see that the repository here points to the latest one. Okay, so it doesn't carry baggage with it. And the fourth scenario here is it copies a bundle image to a repository with namespaces, creates a location image pointing to the repository with namespaces. So when you do a copy for a place like this, right, you already contain /some/namespace/new location. You'll see that the full namespaces are in the locations OCI image. Okay, so it doesn't save just the last part, it saves the full repository. So namespaces and repository. And fifth, and I believe it's the last, when you copy the bundle twice, first with an older version of image package, it creates images on the second copy, and images location images. So let's imagine you have an older version of image package. You copy the bundle first from place A to place B. And then if you copy again image package with a newer version of image package that contains this feature, when you copy it from B to C, it creates the images log file. And it doesn't error out, nothing bad happens. Okay. The only note we have here is that if the copy fails for some reason, so if you're doing an image package copy and if it fails, this locations OCI image should not be created.
So same copy operation, once with an older version, once with the newer version of image package. But like the source and destination are identical in both those operations. Is that right?
So let's imagine you copy from place repository A to repository B with the old image package. Afterwards, with the new image package, you copy from repository B to repository C.
Okay.
It just works.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
And just to be clear, like this story is just to build that new, like the OCI image that contains the location. Like at the end of the story, having, you know, not having all the authentication credentials for the other registries, that problem still exists. And at the end of the story, well, the performance gets a little bit worse, but the next story, once we start using pool, like those two problems go away.
Yes.
Okay.
So this story is just to include the generate locations OCI image. So there's another story, I think it's linked on the top, that says that this will address the performance problem, but it will only really address it when we fix the other story. Sounds good. Does anyone have any other question? Do you all want to point this story?
I have a few questions that I don't think we have time for now, so I'll abstain.
Okay, cool. 3, 2, 1. Okay, 3 looks like it is the majority. Does anybody want to say something?
Seems like there's a lot in here. I wonder if, yeah, but it was
My 2
almost
points.
a 5. It was like a large 3, small 5 in my head, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go 3.
Yeah, mine was just based on intuition and gut feel. It just seemed like performance and a few other issues, but it could split it maybe down, but just felt like a 3, just my gut speaking out loud.
Okay, so it looks like the rough consensus is 3. So let's go with that. Cool.
Cool. And Carrie, maybe you could add questions to the issue here or ask in Slack and we can link to it. Awesome. All right. Thank you all. I know we're a couple minutes over, but we can close out.
All right. Thanks everyone for all the great discussions we had today. If you're watching this from home, we hope that you are able to attend our next community meeting, which will be June 7th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, as our May 31st meeting, which is next week, is canceled due to a national holiday. Otherwise, we do meet every Monday for these community meetings at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We also meet every second and fourth Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time for our office hours, which just allows for more in-depth discussion and any help you may need from the Carvel tool suite. We will be meeting for office hours this week on May 27th, so please feel free to join us then. Otherwise, if you aren't able to attend any of the meetings, you can find us on the Kubernetes public Slack workspace in the Carvel channel. And on Twitter at Carvel_dev, DEV. And with that, we hope you have a great week. Thank you.